Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Foundations.
Okay, Isaiah 7, 10 to 11, it says, Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask for a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it as deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. And Ahaz refused to ask God for a sign.
Foundations. Understanding the Jewish foundations of our Christian faith. With Robbo Robinson and Mandy Warby.
For those of us that have grown up in the West, we remember well being taught the basic Christmas story that Mary was visited by the angel Gabriel and told that God had chosen her to be the mother of the Messiah. She then became pregnant and gave birth to a baby boy whose name was to be Jesus. Her future husband, Joseph, would marry her, and after travelling a long distance at the end of her pregnancy, she finally did give birth to a baby boy in a stable. While they were there, they were visited by some local shepherds and some wise men from the East who gave precious gifts to the baby. That's what we were raised on, and we never really questioned whether or not the virgin birth was factual. We simply believed it to be true.
That's what I grew up on. I grew up on that story, and I used to sit down on when it was coming up to Christmas and make my own Christmas cards with exactly the same picture. A little stable with a little wooden trough, some straw hanging out of it, and a baby lying in it.
Yep.
And the wise men and Joseph and Mary, maybe a donkey, maybe a sheep. That was what I grew up on.
Yeah, that's right.
Never, ever thought to question it. But there are a lot of detractors of the Bible who've liked to say that it's absolutely a false claim, especially the virgin birth. And I know we have touched on this before, but we're starting a series actually now on the Mashiach, the Messiah. It's going to be a little while. It's going to take us a while to get through it. But this is... Everything we're going to look at is going to prove the identity of the Jewish Messiah. So I'm pretty excited about this.
It is so important too that we can prove his identity. And of course, the virgin birth in Isaiah 7, where it's first mentioned, and this is a verse that of course it's seen on Christmas cards, and all over.
This is the Christmas verse.
It's the Christmas verse. But it says, Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she'll call his name Emmanuel.
Like you said, this is on all the Christmas cards. This is the Christmas verse. But I just want to say that I read an article by Dr. Itan Bar. He's from the Ministry of One for Israel. This guy knows his stuff. He's got more degrees than a thermometer at the end of his name. He knows his stuff. But I really need to give you a bit of historical background to that verse, all right? So when you read in Isaiah 7, you find out that King Ahaz was the king of Judah, the southern kingdom of the separated nation, because the kingdom of Israel was in the north and they had separated. Now, Ahaz was wicked to the core. He rejected the God of his fathers. He was a Baal worshipper. He even sacrificed his own children as human sacrifices to these evil gods. This guy was the epitome of wickedness. Boo, hiss, down with Ahaz. He was a bad, bad man. Okay, his neighbours weren't any better. So you've got the king to the north, King Ratzin of Aram, and then you had King Pekah of Samaria. And both of those kings wanted to form an alliance with King Ahaz to fight against the Assyrians, who were evil to the core as well. But he didn't want to join an alliance with them. So they basically decided that they were going to then besiege Jerusalem, fight against King Ahaz, depose him, put a puppet on the throne, and then with Judah in alliance, they would then war against the Assyrians. All right? But Ahaz thought, I need help now, so I'm going to see if I can send a lot of loot to the king of Assyria, that really bad terrorist dude, and make an alliance with him. Now, before that could happen, of course, Jerusalem was besieged. Isaiah the prophet turns up with his son. He was only a young son, whose name was Shear-Jashub. Great name, if you're having any more boys.
That's right, yes.
Shear-Jashub, that's great. And he wanted to confront King Ahaz and say that God would protect him if he would call upon him. Okay, now, Ahaz was in the line of King David, and God had promised David and his descendants there would always be one on the throne, and that God would maintain the line of David. And God always keeps his promises. Yeah. Ahaz, however, was looking down on the two neighbouring kings that were besieging the city, and he really didn't want to believe or didn't think he could trust in what Isaiah was saying. Ahaz needed a solution right now. Isaiah then says to Ahaz to ask God for a sign. Ask for something really hard. Okay, Isaiah 7:10-11, it says, Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask for a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it as deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. And Ahaz refused to ask God for a sign. He was a very evil king. And he basically said, oh, no. I don't want to test the Lord your God.
That's a bit ironic, isn't it? He was basically testing God every day with his evil actions.
How God withheld, I guess because of his promise to David. But the audacity of it all.
Yeah. But of course then in verse 13, if this is still in Isaiah 7, this passage continues. Isaiah prophesied then, speaking God's word not just to Ahaz, but to the nation. Then he said, Listen now, O house of David, is it too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men, that you will try the patience of my God as well? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. He will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be forsaken.
Okay, now this is where I kind of have to stress something that Dr. Itan Bar said. He made a couple of points here, and I can't think of another alternative. This guy's smarter than me, so I'm going to defer to him until I hear something different. He said that the boy who's before you will grow and refuse evil and choose good. He's saying that that boy is not referring to the miraculously conceived child, but to his own son.
Right, okay.
Shear-Jashub, because he said, because before he can choose good over evil, these 2 kings who are besieging you are going to be repelled. They're going to be done away with. Mm-hmm. Well, it couldn't have been the miraculously conceived child because he wasn't even conceived yet. And even if he was born that very day that the prophecy was given, he'd only be 2 because it was only a 2-year wait to see the besieging over.
Yep.
So therefore it had to be a reference to his own son who was standing there. Because otherwise, why would it mention that he brought his own son?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the extra bit of information that we need.
Yeah, you think, why did he mention that? Well, that's why. Because this boy was going to be old enough to be able to choose good over evil. And when he was at that age, 2 years hence, he would be able to see those besieging kings gone. And that's how Ahaz would know without a doubt that God was the one who was making a promise. Okay, so it had to be that. Now, here's the amazing thing, and we're going to talk about this in more detail next time. This babe that was going to be conceived, I want to just point out a few things to hold in our thoughts until the next program. He would be conceived miraculously of a virgin. That is a point of contention we're going to look at next time. And that the sign would be that you'd know that there was a true prophecy when these besieging kings would be gone. And the other point was his name. His name is Emmanuel. And we just say, Emmanuel, God with us. And that's true. But then Psalm 139 says, where can I go from your presence? Where can I, escape you, Lord? Because if I go into the heights of heavens, you're there. If I go into the depths of the oceans, you're there. So we know that, yes, God is with us. But this is actually a very specific name when it says God with us. And we're going to look at that in more detail a little bit next time, but then further on from that.
We are looking forward to this series developing over the weeks ahead, but next time on Foundations, we'll continue to look at that claim of the virgin birth.
This has been Foundations, a look at the Jewish foundations of our Christian faith. For study notes, resources and more, see vision.org.au/foundations.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.